Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Cinefile. This week, we're talking about 2018's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This was my pick this week. Jake, I'm curious as to your thoughts on the first of this proposed trilogy of films, the second which comes out on Friday.
So I hadn't seen this until we talked about it for the podcast. I didn't watch it when it came out in theaters. I haven't seen it up to now. Even though I know it gets a lot of really good buzz around it. It was a smash hit at the box office when it came out, and a lot of people really like it, and I liked it as well. Uh, as much as superheroes aren't per se my cup of tea, I liked it. It was fun. It was inventive. It was a very unique style, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the animation style and the approach they went for with that. Kind of reverting back to the inception of superheroes in comic book form. So I really like that aspect of the nostalgia it brought in. The multiverse, the story was good, but I feel like the market is almost saturated with multiverse type stories now. I mean, even thinking in Marvel, like you have Doctor Strange, really gets into the multiverse, and the latest Ant-Man, I believe, deals with the multiverse some.
Yes.
So that I guess was one my biggest drawback, and it's nothing that this movie does wrong. It's not something that just is pertinent to this movie. It's just I feel like I don't know. I kind of had the reaction of like, oh, another multiverse movie. You know what I mean? It's kind of like another one and another one. So, that perhaps is my only critique. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I have a hunch, but
Yeah, no, I remember seeing this in theaters when it came out in 2018. And you mentioned it blew up the box office. For any movie that doesn't have Spider-Man in the title, that is 100% true. It made $384 million. But for this movie, like it should it should be making close to $600 million, maybe
really,
$700 million. Yeah, I mean, all the Spider-Man movies, especially the last one is one of the highest grossing films of all time. Spider-Man No Way Home, I think $1.8 billion.
mm,
Spider-Man No Way or Far From Home was just over a billion, and the Spider-Man Homecoming from 2017 was at like $700 million.
mm,
So for this to be so much, like it's a significant amount less. I mean, it's still good numbers, but that just shows that people didn't know what to expect when coming into it. And
mm.
this film is spectacular. Upon rewatch, I I'm so wishy washy with favorite things. Freaking Sound of Music over here. These are my favorite things. Um, mm, this may be my favorite Spider-Man movie.
Really,
It's Yeah, like I love No Way Home, but this is a better movie than No Way Home. It's a better film. Um, and you mentioned the multiverse. This was like the beginning of all of that.
okay,
So yeah, like Star Wars kind of ushered in a new era, at least with the prequels, ushering a new era of like CGI. Now everything's CGI all the time. This movie ushered in that idea of the multiverse and it really championed that. It stars Miles Morales, which is not Peter Parker.
hmm,
There are Peter Parkers in this, um, and Peter Porker. um,
yeah,
yeah, and see, and what I love about talking about these kind of movies with you is because you are not like a fanboy like me. You and that's not a knock on you.
no,
That's just not your cup of tea. But the animation specifically, this won best animated feature
mhm.
at the Academy Awards, rightfully so. I think the animation, the way they do it, we're going to talk about a little bit, um, kind of changed the game, right? From the stereotypical Pixar or Frozen version of Disney animated filmmaking, and did this kind of like 3D, but also hand drawn. But you see a lot of depth of field that is
Mhm.
added into it, which makes it really unique. And obviously, it's inspired by comic book art. Um, it's just an in the story. I like the story. It's just an all around really fun time. What's really interesting about this movie is, as I mentioned before, obviously, when it comes to box office, it didn't light things up like a Spider-Man movie should. But this did gangbusters on like video release. So on digital and on streaming services, this thing, goes gangbusters. People really, really like it. So the movie that's coming out on Friday, um, well, actually, preview showing start Thursday night. And tonight I'm actually seeing it, which I'm excited about. But and I'm saying tonight as in this is being recorded a week previous, but when you're watching it and you click on it in the first 5 minutes, like we know you all do, that night is the night I'm going to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. You're like,
Got
and
a
he
whole
needed to explain that why.
multiverse
Yeah, we got a
time
whole
travel
yeah,
thing going
yeah,
on
yeah,
in this
yeah,
video.
yeah.
When is it?
How's the future?
When is it? It's
Is it
today.
cool? Yeah.
That's all you need to know. It's today.
Yes. Um, yeah, worry not about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worries for itself. That's Matthew 6:34.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There you go. I
So
prefer tomorrow is a mystery, yesterday is history, but today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. And that is Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda.
two really solid sources right there.
Two very wise sources.
Two very wise sources. Yeah, but let's just jump into it. Had you heard about Miles Morales kind of before this movie? I mean, I'm sure maybe it has been brought up since this movie's been out for 5 years, but had you really heard of Miles Morales, or was this kind of a new experience seeing a new version that's not Peter Parker?
Yeah, I since this movie came out, obviously I've heard of Miles Morales, because this movie is so talked about, especially um, people of our generation. I feel like this really resonated with. But no, I had no idea of Miles Morales. I had never heard the name before this had come out. So it was interesting seeing, different takes on Spider-Man, because really I feel like this movie, all the Spider-Man in this, or Spider-Man and women, yeah, there's a Spider
And
Woman
pigs.
and pigs, spider people or spider things. Anyways, all those I don't know what I'm saying. All those characters that are spider heroes, shall we call them? Um, None of them were traditional Peter Parker. None of them were the high school kid growing up working at the newspaper while going to school and then moonlighting as the superhero. We don't see that at all, which I thought was really interesting, because I feel like in every iteration of Spider-Man, that is where everything originates from and takes a slightly different twist on, but it's still that same period. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like in this, we have, you have Miles Morales, who, yes, is a teenager going to high school and everything, but he's a character of color and has a very different lifestyle than the Peter Parker that we know from so many of the Spider-Man, whether it's the Amazing Spider-Man, Homecoming, that
Right.
iteration, whatever your Spider-Man iteration is, Miles Morales has a different experience than that Peter Parker. And then you have, you know, um, Peter B. Parker, who is an
A legend.
adult, is a middle-aged, washed up, overweight, married Spider-Man. Um,
Well, he was married,
well, separated,
and separated,
divorced.
and then by the end of the movie,
Yeah.
married again. Yeah.
But that's a very different timeline that we've seen in Peter Parker. And then even the Peter Parker that dies in Miles's universe, like he is more adult than we
Right.
traditionally see Spider-Man. I mean, he's married um in Miles's universe. And so it's like you don't think of Spider-Man being married in the traditional timeline. So I felt like this explored a lot of different possibilities about who Spider-Man could be, and added a lot of layers to the Spider-Man character, because it allowed you to explore things than the traditional storyline allows you to, I think.
Right. And I think it's really interesting. I'll make the comparison between this and Batman Beyond, which I don't think you've seen Batman Beyond
Mm-hmm.
either, but I think you may know what I'm talking about. Or just nod your head and
I'm
say that
for,
you know what. Okay.
I'm
No, like,
familiar enough to the comps to talk about it.
okay, cool. Because that essentially, so I would argue that the two most popular superheroes of all time, um, in film,
Mm-hmm.
because I think Superman's probably the most popular of all time. I mean, it came out in the 30s.
Yeah.
Are Batman and Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Or the two most popular characters are Batman for DC and Spider-Man for Marvel.
Yeah.
And it's interesting the parallels where we expand upon what we know of Batman in Batman Beyond, him being older, he having to mentor this, spoiler alert, clone of himself, as Terry McGinnis. I almost said Terry McGillis. Like, and I was like, wait, hang on. You mean like Kelly McGillis, like from Top Gun?
uh,
Um, yeah, a top Batman. No, Tom Cruise is Batman.
that would be legendary.
That would be freaking legendary. That's the third Top Gun movie. I mean, he's already going to space, so
No,
he's already going to a space in a new movie. So, and that is true. He is going on a spacewalk.
of
For all
course
of
he
you
is.
that didn't know this, yeah, he's teaming up with the director of The Bourne Identity and is going to space. So very cool.
Nice.
He's such a nut, but he makes really entertaining movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to talking about Terry McGillis. McGinnis.
You did it. Oh
Uh,
shoot.
so anyway, so we explored different elements of the Batman mythos that we
Mm-hmm.
don't see in the films, because the films are more traditional in that they are, the Batman for the most part is from like 45 at the very top to like maybe 30.
Yeah.
He's basically that age. He's already kind of been Batman for a while, except for the Batman, the one that
Mm-hmm.
just came out this past year. It so there's like it's very boxed in, I would
Yeah.
say, the Batman story. But you're able to expand on these ideas and look at them in a new way with Batman Beyond. So then we take Spider-Man, and they do essentially the same thing. They look at a different Spider-Man, Miles Morales, who is newer to the comics and has a bit of a different power set. He has a lot of the same, but he has some additional powers. Like he can electrocute. He has like an electricity kind of power, and then he also can go invisible. Um, which of course they play for humor in this.
Mm-hmm.
But we are able to look at what if Spider-Man was somebody of a different color, or what if he had a different experience, or in terms of the multiverse, what if he was, a woman or a pig or Nicolas Cage. Which what a legend.
I
Spider-Man Noir.
I I really enjoyed Noir Spider-Man so much.
I know you did. Um but we'll get to
Yes.
why I know you did later.
Okay.
Uh don't want to spoil the ending of this podcast. But um, but we look at all these different experiences, and in the vein of animation, you are able to do more, and I think experiment more. People are more open to that than to saying just throwing in a a black Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously seeing a live action Miles Morales would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people, even with the Little Mermaid, that
Right.
I was seating a Little Mermaid last night, and there was a couple that came in. They said, "Hey, we looked on IMDb, and we saw this movie had 1 star." And so I had explained to them that IMDb is reflective not of what the actual movie is, but of people kind of with agendas that have certain comments or certain thoughts about the changes, and so they review bomb it.
Yeah.
And they ended up really liking the movie. But my point is that in animation, we are able to make these changes. And so I think it's really interesting that this is like the first foray
Mm-hmm.
for Marvel. I mean, obviously they have like animated movies that are straight to DVD, but like one that's put in theaters, and it is just expertly executed
Yeah.
by producers like Chris Lord and no, Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Good Lord, I'm messing up names today. My name is Bob. Um,
And I'm
and
Josh.
this is Bill. Shout out Dr. West.
Oh, Dr. West. Hey, Bill.
um,
Oh, no, I didn't get your email.
anyway, so I think they add a level of humor that is inherent to the Spider-Man comics that we don't really always see in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
That I really like. I love Peter B. Parker so much, and there are a couple of lines where he goes, "Oh, can you pay for that?" He's like, "I'm not exactly liquid right now." It's like that is a amen to that, sir. And then later in the movie, um, he like he what does he call the uh flash drive? Like the
No,
I want to
the
I want to say Dingle Hopper because I've seen
yeah,
Little Mermaid everywhere, but
it's
no, it's
something stupid. The gizmo or
yeah. And
something.
so like yeah, and so he says like in the rolls thing, I can get you all the rolls. Which yeah, welcome
Uh,
to Texas Roadhouse. My name is Spider-Man. So these different humor elements that you
yeah.
don't really see in the other Spider-Man movies. I really enjoyed the approach of this movie, looking at it from a different kind of lens in almost every regard. And yeah, it maybe took some getting used to, especially the animation style itself. Maybe took some getting used to, but I thought the story was told in a very compelling way,
Mhm.
and I'm really excited to see more for sure.
I agree.
Um,
It's um that you talk about the style. I think that's probably one of the high points of the movie, and I think a lot of people that I've talked to, especially if people that are more than just Marvel movie fans, right? People who are familiar with the comics, who have read some of the comics, or even just aware of them. I think they really, if that's your how you got into Marvel, I think this movie is made specifically for you. But
mhm.
even just I I've never read a comic book in my life that I know of, but I just thought it was it was such a different style. And I thought it was nostalgic, it was inventive, and it was really fun. And um I wrote this down doing a little research that it required over 180 animators, which was the largest team that Sony Pictures Animation had ever assembled for a movie at the
Oh yeah,
time, because the process required that much detail, which is ironic because like the style they were going for was printed in that way originally because it was cheap and easy to mass produce.
exactly.
So I find it so ironic that to then turn that into a movie requires 180 people to do it when you literally printed it like in the cheapest way on the cheapest paper so you could print that many more copies and sell
Yeah,
them.
And it took like 3 years.
Yeah.
And once they rendered, and I was reading this, like once they rendered it out for the first time, they had animators go over every frame again and kind of I can't think of the right word, not rough it up, but make it look like there was it that they put care into it. So it
Yeah.
almost looked like it was like, I mean, the way in which they approached the animation in this movie. Miles Morales is shot at 12 frames per second. Peter B. Parker is shot at 24 frames per second because Peter B. Parker knows how to be Spider-Man and Miles Morales still doesn't.
Wow.
So the way in which they animated Miles Morales reflected how he wasn't sure about how to go about being Spider-Man and how to live up to this legacy. Yeah, and so that's why, like, when you're watching it, it kind of can get a little overwhelming.
Yeah,
because there's just something there's something off about it, which in one sense is really cool that we can come up with like literally just changing the frames per second and our eyes are like, wait, what? But at the same time, that for 2 hours, I mean, this movie was what, like almost 2 hours.
It's just under 2 hours.
Yeah, it's just under 2 hours. I think this next one's over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like that for a couple hours can really mess with your brain and maybe even give you a migraine. But at the same time, it's just so the way in which they approach this is like they started from page one. It's like they reinvented the wheel. It's because it's so unique. And now they're trying to replicate it with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is coming out with a movie later this year. And it's animated and it's kind of in that style. It's like a mix between Clone Wars animation and this, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just it made it so much more compelling, and there's so much going on. So I like my ADHD brain was really enjoying all the different things. Like when he first does the shoulder touch, hey, when he does the shoulder touch, and then he gets his hand stuck in her hair, and then cut it off and everything, and he goes, "Oh, maybe nobody noticed." And then it just in big letters, everyone knows. And then it's yeah. And then he's run through the halls and he goes, act stupid. And then he goes, who's Morales? It's like, not that stupid. So, I mean, all these different elements to it really made it look like you were watching a comic book come to life. When we talk about the actors for this movie, there are a couple of newcomers or people you may not have heard of. Shameik Moore as Miles Morales, I thought was spectacular.
Great performance. I really thought he did well, very well.
Yeah, and my understanding is that they almost animated Miles in a way off of his performance. So, like looking at the way in which he said things and the way in which he moved, they animated him based on that. But they also this is kind of weird, in the trailer for Across Into the Spider-Verse, it's not Chris Pine that does the like original Spider-Man from Miles universe. I think it's John Krasinski, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
But the fact that we have Chris Pine as Spider-Man, we have Nick from New Girl. Shoot, it's so yeah, I can't remember his name, but
you're doing a great
Nick
job with names today.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot that I don't know how to do names today. Yeah. Do you have it written down?
Not that dumb. Are you talking Peter B. Parker?
Yeah.
Jake Johnson.
Jake Johnson.
Sorry, like I said, I've not seen New Girl, so I didn't know who you were talking about.
I've barely seen New Girl, but he's literally such an icon. Yeah, Jake Johnson, so good in this. Hailee Steinfeld as Spider-Gwen. I thought she was spectacular.
Yeah, that might have been my favorite performance. I thought she was spectacular.
Yeah, she was so, I don't know, like really, like I wanted to hang out with her. I also probably wanted to go on a date with her, if I'm being honest, but I wanted to hang out with her for sure.
There it is. There it is.
Ben's romance moment. That's had to do one. Have to do one every episode.
Uh,
Um, but and
do
then
we have
Nicolas
to?
Cage. No,
Yes, Nicolas Cage as Noir Spider-Man.
Spider Noir. Yeah, yeah. He's so good in it. John Mulaney
Yeah.
as Peter Porker. Um, uh, Catherine Hahn as Doc Ock
Mhm.
is really good. Um, what's his face from X-Men? Um, Liev Schreiber
Yeah.
uh, plays Kingpin. I thought he did really, really well as well. But all of these performances,
Yeah.
it was hard to detect that they were like they really did a good job of making these characters look like what the actor sounds like, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't, except for because Nicolas Cage's voice is so iconic.
I will say, like,
Nicolas Cage.
there are some people that like are so known for their voices. I'm thinking Nick Cage. I'm thinking John Mulaney. Um, Lily Tomlinson is in here as Aunt May. Um, and so people that like I know their voices, like
Mhm.
I don't know, like it was like I actively knew who was voicing those characters, but like it wasn't like out of place. You know what I mean?
Right. It
Um,
wasn't and I hesitate to say this because Chris Pratt actually did a great job as Mario, but especially in the trailer when you're not engulfed in the movie, it's like, oh, that's Chris Pratt.
yeah,
And because he has such a well-known voice, that it's pretty obvious. Or honestly, because I watch so much like Star Wars animation, I can tell when it's D. Bradley Baker because
that
D.
man is.
Bradley Baker does a lot of voices.
Oh yeah, that
So
man
I could tell,
is
or
a unit.
he is, and he's elite.
Yeah,
Or Sam Witwer, I can tell, you can kind of tell, but these characters, I mean, I really enjoyed this film for
yeah,
sure. Um, what did you think about? Because I would say the word that I would use to describe this movie is legacy or passing the torch, if that's a phrase,
yeah,
or like trying to live up to something larger than life. And that's essentially what this movie is. And it actually looks like what the second movie is as well, but in a different
yeah,
way. But I thought that instead of, because it's always Peter Parker trying to live up to Uncle Ben in a way, but
yeah,
this time it's Miles Morales trying to live up to Spider-Man.
yeah.
Um, I really liked that angle to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it brings um it brings a new aspect to the franchise. Obviously, like a central theme of this movie is that anybody can be Spider-Man.
Right.
That's very much the message, and transferable then to the audience is anyone can be a hero.
Mhm.
Um, and so I find that um I don't know, I felt like that was just a very I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's a very refreshing.
Yeah,
Uh, um,
it's endearing for sure.
yeah. I feel like it really like draws you in as the audience, more, and it helps you connect to Spider-Man, specifically Miles as Spider-Man.
Right.
Really, really trying to step into that hero role, even though it's really a coming of age kind of story, and it was I was reading something that Lord and Miller were quoted as saying like the purpose of this movie was to show young people that they have it within them to step up and become their own, become the heroes. And at the same time, the message to adults is to recognize the things in young people that need to be called out and uplifted and help them become their own heroes.
They do a
Um,
really good job of that too.
yeah. especially looking at like kind of like the subplot of Miles's dad and how that plays into the story and everything. And so I felt like it doesn't seem like that's not Spider-Man. That doesn't seem like that's not a
No,
Spider-Man
that seems like
message,
a very much a Spider-Man message.
but it's something that we haven't, at least in Spider-Man content I've seen, is not something that I feel like has been conveyed, or a story that's been told.
Right.
And so I think, already having, I feel like we connect so well with Miles because we already have an idea of who Spider-Man is in our minds. We have that larger than life figure, just as Miles sees Spider-Man as this larger than life figure, but then he has to step up and fill that role.
Right.
And so I don't know. I feel like, we talk about, I know it's something I've said before on the podcast, point of access for the movies, like who's our contact point as a character. And I feel
Yeah.
like having Miles being that contact point in this movie, I feel like that works just so well because it already plays into the myth and in the legend and the larger Spider-Man universe that they count on us as the audience knowing. I mean, even someone like me I've not seen every Spider-Man movie. I've not seen probably most of the Spider-Man movies, but I know who Spider-Man is. I understand he's a superhero. I understand, the basics of his story, and so I can understand this larger than life character that Miles is starting to step into, in the challenges and fears that he has. Doing that, I understand them as the audience. Yeah, so I think I just think that's something that this movie does so well.
Now comes the time in the podcast where we talk about our rosebud and thorn. Jake, I'm going to throw it off to you. What are your rosebud and thorn?
So Rose for this movie, I've talked about it a lot already, is the animation style. I think that just this brings such a sense of nostalgia. It really harkens back to the original. And I think it really pays homage to the origins of Spider-Man. Another fun fact that really kind of shows an intentionality of paying homage to the origins of Spider-Man. This movie is dedicated to the two creators of Spider-Man. Obviously,
Stan Lee and Steve Ditko.
Yeah, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, who also they both passed away in 2018. So this movie is dedicated to both of their memories, and I thought that was really touching, and it's so fitting because I feel like this is a movie that honors the origins of Spider-Man, but also takes it in such a new direction. And so I think that's really, really enjoyable. An honorable mention, Rose. I didn't write this down. Something kept me from writing it down. I don't know what it is, but Hailee Steinfeld playing Gwen. I'm going to give an honorable mention, Rose, to it. I don't know.
It's because you just didn't want to be a simp. That's
kind of, yeah, I guess.
You don't want to be basic.
Apparently not. You already called
Leave
it
that to
anyways. Me. Oh shoot. So yeah, I really enjoyed the style of this. I will say I kind of hated how they made Kingpin look though. Like I get what they're going for, but
thick?
like, well, just like the way like his shirt was so small. Like I don't know.
And he like had a hunchback.
Yeah.
Like his head wasn't on top of his body. His
and
head
then
was
like his tie kept
like at
flapping
his
out,
sternum.
which like that means his tie is not long enough. And I'm very particular about ties being the appropriate length on men.
And he wasn't using a tie clip.
Yeah, it is touching the top of your belt buckle, and this tie was nowhere close to the top of his belt buckle.
Touching the top of your belt buckle or in the middle of your belt buckle? If it's a normal, regular sized belt buckle.
Top to middle.
Okay. I always thought that the very, very tip was in the very middle.
That's fine. I think you go any further than I wouldn't go any further than that. Basically, I don't want to see shirt, but I also don't want to see it go past your belt.
Yeah, because if it goes past your belt, you look like an idiot.
You look like Donald Trump,
I
which
have the best ties. Look at these ties. They're
yeah,
so long, very long.
yeah. We
Yeah,
don't need to talk about
gorgeous
him.
ties. Yeah, no, yeah, that was
Uh,
yeah. And if it's too short, you look
it makes you
like
look fatter
all of
than
the
you are.
Gryffindors in the third Harry Potter movie
Yeah,
when they
it makes
finally take off their sweaters and their like ties are
yeah,
like this top, but you got a great knot, but the tie,
yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
No, ties too short makes you look fatter than you are, which is someone who has a considerable gut to them. I purposely try not to look bigger than I already am. So when I see skinny people that just have like they've got like half an inch left to the top, I'm like, come on, you literally have the body that you don't need to look fat. Bring your tie to the correct length. Um,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
there's my style rant for the day. Wow, I didn't know I was going to get into men's fashion trends on this
Welcome to Men's
podcast.
Warehouse. You're gonna like the way you look.
Uh, Men's Warehouse, sponsor us, please. Even just give us a free suit, like
Yeah, free suit. I have plenty of ties. Grandpa collected ties, my grandpa.
yes,
So I got, yeah, no,
that would be elite.
that'd be that would be so elite. We're keeping all this in, by the
I love it. Um, anyways, Rose. So animation style is my Rose. I forgot where we are. My bud is going to be the villains. We have a lot of villains in this, and I recognize most of them as like traditional Spider-Man villains. Kingpin and Doc Ock and the Scorpion guy. I can't remember his name, but I remember him
way.
from.
Scorpion. That's literally his name.
Oh my gosh, you're not the only one
Scorpion.
struggling with names
The
today.
Scorpion guy.
Um,
That's like saying that Jake guy. He You mean Jake?
yeah.
The name. That's the name. Yeah.
Anyways, I recognize them. Miles's uncle. I don't know. I really liked that
Oh, the
villain.
Prowler?
Yeah, I don't know if that's an actual Spider-Man villain. I think it probably is. Anyways, I feel like there's so many of them in here, and obviously Kingpin is like our main villain because all the rest of them are working for him. But I feel like one thing I always enjoyed about Spider-Man, because I remember watching The Amazing Spider-Man as a kid, like on Cartoon Network. Like whenever I finally got to stay up till 9 o'clock, because like at 8 o'clock they would start playing Amazing Spider-Man on Cartoon Network. And once I started like I don't know, I want to say like second grade or whatever, my parents let me start staying up till 9 o'clock, and I could watch Amazing Spider-Man. Like I was just like, I love this. So yes, I did have a bit of a superhero era as a child. Shocking. Um, but
Mom, why is John Wayne not Spider-Man?
exactly, because John Wayne wouldn't take a whole series having to save New York.
John
He could
He'd
do
be
it in a
like,
day.
but he'd also be like,
Listen
what the
here, Kingpin.
yeah. You want to tell me why Mary Jane keeps getting, lock her up in a safe, make sure she doesn't get out.
Oh
Like that's the
God,
that's the crux of all these movies.
God.
Pilgrim.
But the thing I enjoyed about Amazing Spider-Man is I felt like, and it's the nature of a series, is like you got to delve into all these villains and really like flesh out all of their stories. Um,
Yeah.
and like that was one thing that series really I felt like did well, was like really like made interesting and exciting villains. Um, and so I felt like having all of them in this movie, and especially a movie that's under 2 hours, there's so many things that I was like, okay, if we would have just had like one villain or like two villains, like we could have gotten in a little more. Um,
Uh, I
it's
think
it
that's honestly the problem with a lot of superhero movies
yeah,
is that if it's not a supervillain movie,
yeah,
so you focus more and you only have like 2.5 hours.
yeah.
So yeah, I completely agree. Like
Mhm.
the X-Men animated series does a great job of fleshing out villains.
Yeah,
Amazing Spider-Man, all of these different animated series because they have the time to do it. That's why Mark Hamill's Joker is elite,
yeah,
is because they had the time to flesh it out. But when you have 2.5 hours, you can't do that. And with multiple villains, I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like some I like what we get. Like I said, the Prowler, Miles' uncle, I think is a really interesting villain, and obviously having the wrinkle of him being Miles' uncle is really um really interesting for the story. I like we get some of Kingpin's backstory, kind of his inciting incident, if you will, the thing that sets him on his path towards evil. And then also we get a really fresh take on Doc Ock,
Mm-hmm.
making him a woman. Uh, and so I felt like there was a lot of promise there, and just we weren't able to get into a lot of it. So that's my thorn, uh, or my bud, excuse me. And then I don't have a thorn. If there's a thorn, I would say it's why do we have so many stupid multiverse movies? But now that I heard you say, you said it at the beginning
This
that
was like the impetus.
yeah,
This
this
started it all. Yeah.
started Marvel's. Hey, it worked for this one. Let's try it 50 more times, and then everything else has to be like, hey, multiverse, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like that was my only like sour note in this movie, as I was like, really,
Like
it's about the
really?
multiverse. But I can't bash this movie for it if it's what started the multiverse
Right.
craze.
No, and that's completely valid. And for those of you watching and listening, if you notice what Jake just did, he did something that we really want you all to try and do when you are watching movies. And that is to look at a movie in context. Because if we watch everything with the context of 2023, some of these older films are going to be really boring.
Mm-hmm.
But when we remember when it came out, the time period, what was going on, and what the technology was like, what storytelling was like at that point, we can understand a little bit more where audiences were coming from, where the filmmakers were coming from, and maybe that paints a different picture for the movie overall. And so what Jake just did is he's like, hey, I hate that this is a multiverse movie, but since this is the beginning, I can't fault him for it.
Yeah.
And no, I like, and Jake's smiling, kind of laughing a little bit, but so many people, and of course, this is going back to Star Wars, crap on Star Wars because they don't think it's cool because they've seen all of the movies that were inspired by Star Wars or Indiana Jones. They're like, Indiana Jones is lame. All those adventure movies that you like, Indiana Jones. That's the reason why you like adventure
First
movies.
of all, if y'all say Indiana Jones is lame, I'm gonna come fight you. Like
Yeah.
the literal least lame person ever is Indiana Jones.
Dude is a legend.
Yeah.
And that's why quick plug for the next 4 weeks are Indiana Jones. We are doing an Indiana Jones movie every single week in June, leading up to Dial of Destiny. More on that later. But all of these things, when you look at them in context, you can have a different appreciation and maybe like it a little bit more. Because one of the
Yeah.
things I hate hearing is, oh, it's old, so I don't like it.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. Really? For me, my rose, I'm going to say, is the animation as well. I think the animation was revolutionary, very much groundbreaking, and I really enjoyed seeing. Honestly, I think the coolest part about it is the fact that they changed the frames per second. I think that's fascinating, and they
Yeah.
changed it by character, which is
Yes.
something obviously, unless you want to pay a lot of money and somehow do like a dual. I don't know. It'd be really hard to do that in live action.
Yeah.
Um, that would be that would be so hard to do.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That'd almost be impossible. Like it would take like 5 years for the
Yeah.
edit. So I really like the animation. I gotta go with Hailee Steinfeld as Gwen. She's so good as Gwen. I and I will be that simp or whatever. I will actually say that she's really good. Because I was so impressed by the vocal inflection, which I like a lot of vocal inflection. Um, even when I'm working and I'm doing a podcast or something like that, I like to change my vocal inflection to make it more interesting. And so I really liked her. I really liked the whole cast, but specifically her and then Shameik Moore as Miles. I thought those two and their chemistry was really good.
Yeah,
They had really
I
good
agree.
chemistry.
I'd agree.
Bud, I don't really have a Bud on this one. I do have a Thorn. I guess it could be a Bud and a Thorn. This movie, low key, kind of gives me a headache. As much as I love the animation style,
Yeah,
at the same time, it like kind of gives me a headache. Just because it's sporadic and kind of all over the place,
yeah,
which once again is great. It looks really, really cool, but and I can't imagine it any other way.
yeah,
So it's like I don't want it to change, but at the same time, it's like my eyes kind of hurt a little bit.
yeah,
Like it's like I'm complaining, but I also don't want anything to change. So we're all good, but it's
yeah.
yeah. So that's my Rosebud and Thorn. Um, yeah. Next, we're going to be talking about who we think we are. Jake, I'm going to pass it off to you once again. Who do you think I am? I think I could take a guess on this.
So everyone knows that I keep one sheet of notes for the movie. And I have written down here that I have written down Miles. I think you're Miles. And I stand by that.
Interesting. Okay.
But the whole time we've been talking about this episode, I've kind of, I don't know if I've changed my mind because I still think you're Miles. Like the humor and like the awkwardness, and kind of the
No, please talk more
sporadicness,
about my
the
awkwardness. Yes, please.
the sporadicness of Miles's train of thought very much reminds
Yeah,
me of
that's
you.
very funny.
But the more I think about Peter B. Parker, I'm like, all that's also Ben, because like his humor is also very much you. Like your humor is a mix of Miles and Peter B. Parker. Like it's very like
I'm
it can
not as
be
cynical as Peter B. Parker,
no, but
especially at the
like
beginning of the movie.
but you're also like you're not cynical, but like you can be like he's savage. Like
He
he
is such a
roasts
savage.
Miles. He roasts Miles a lot. Um and especially at the beginning. And so um I feel like that's very much your humor too. I think you also kind of look like Peter B. Parker a little bit.
That's a compliment.
Yeah.
I'm taking that as a
Um
compliment. Maybe not the thing about, doing crunches, getting strong. And he's
yeah.
like crying in the bathtub and eating pizza. But
Your face looks like Peter B. Parker. We'll say that. Because Peter B. Parker's let himself go.
how does he look like? He's like kind of like
Yeah. Look at that side by side. You see it. You see it. You see it.
I know you're gonna put it side by side in the edit,
America,
aren't
no,
you?
America at home sees it. They can't deny it. I am right.
I am right.
But
Welcome to the I Am Right podcast with Jake Miller.
um, but so yeah, I think you're both. I think you're a mix of both. Which considering those are like character number, if we were to rank like the importance of characters, like it's character 1 and 1A in this movie. So
Right.
no wonder you enjoy this movie so much.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, if I'm anybody, I'm the filmmakers. like,
Yeah,
I'm lucky the filmmakers.
fair enough.
And Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who did Lego Movie, there is a phantom edit of a solo Star Wars story version with them directing,
Yeah, because
which we will never see.
they originally signed on to direct it, and then
If they did, they directed like 80% of
yeah,
it.
and then
And then Kathleen Kennedy
Lucasfilm.
came on set and was like, "Why are you improving?"
Why is this a buddy comedy?
Yeah. And so then they hired Lawrence Kasdan's son
Yeah,
and rewrote part of it, then hired Ron Howard, OG, and and then Solo Star Wars Story was born, which I like Solo.
I was gonna say this
Um,
may be a hot take, but I think that movie gets a lot more crap than it deserved.
I agree. I also think the reason it didn't make like yes, Harrison Ford's a huge draw, but I think the reason it didn't make money is because people were just mad that it wasn't Harrison Ford. But honestly, it's a fun movie. It's a
Yeah.
really fun movie. Um, but yeah, so I can definitely see that for me. For you, this is I have two. I think you are both the Prowler,
Huh.
um, just because you offer sound advice and that character, even though he's a bad guy, he really does love Miles,
Yeah.
and really does care for him. And so I see that with you.
Hmm.
And then Spider-Man Noir, partially because Nicolas Cage based his character off of Humphrey Bogart. So
Which
like,
is a legend.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Um, I love his thing about the Rubik's Cube. He's like, what
that
the
is
heck is
funny.
this? He's like, what is a um
Why is it in
so
color?
and honestly, I would be down to see like a series of shorts or something with Spider-Man Noir. I'd
Yeah.
love to see more of his character fleshed out.
Yeah.
Out of all of the other than Peter B. Parker.
Yeah.
Oh crap. Peter and then Gwen and then Spider-Man Noir. But
Really, the only one I don't want to see as a movie is Spider Pig, which is funny. I like John Mulaney, but I was just kind of like, all right, you're here as a joke.
yeah, put her there. It's like, why is your hand wet?
Because I just washed my hands and for no other reason.
Yeah, no, like that. Yeah, he's so I kind of see you as a mixture of both of those characters, and I knew you would like Spider-Man Noir. I knew it. And if folks remember in the beginning of the podcast, I said I didn't want to spoil the end of the podcast because obviously I thought he was Spider-Man Noir. So, um, yeah, no, I really liked it. Let's go to final thoughts. I really liked it. I really liked my own choice.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, I really like my own.
Now it's the I'm Right podcast with Ben Spare.
Um, no, I really see you as that character. Now we're gonna do final thoughts. Jake, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I'm glad I finally watched this. It's good. I would encourage pretty much everyone to go watch this. Even and especially if you're like me, who superhero movies aren't your thing, go watch it. I think if you have any appreciation at all for what superhero movies have become, and honoring where they came from, I think this movie is really going to be enjoyable for you from the style alone, but also it's new and it's fresh, not just style wise, but story wise as well. I think it's a new and fresh story, and it's something we don't see from superhero movies all that much. So, um, I'm going to celebrate it when there is something new, and I think this is something new and inventive, and so I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really did too. I also forgot to mention the fact that Peter B. Parker got divorced in the movie harkens back to in Spider-Man 4, the unmade Sam Raimi Spider-Man 4. Peter and MJ were going to get married and then separate. I don't, maybe divorced. This was an idea because Peter would have an affair with Felicia Hardy's Black Cat, actually played, if I remember correctly, by Anne Hathaway at one point, was going to play Felicia Hardy. And the filmmakers, like Sam Raimi and others, kind of felt like that would make him too unlikable. So they
Yeah.
scrapped it and obviously scrapped the whole project.
Yeah.
But so that harkens back. I mean, obviously Peter Parker and Peter B. Parker are essentially an amalgamation of Spider-Man memes and Tobey Maguire. Like some of the things he said, where he's like holding back the train. Obviously, that's
Yeah.
a very famous image from Spider-Man 2. Or when he, instead of catches the car in the shop, he just punches it. That was really funny. But overall, I really like this movie. Um, it's frustrating to see how many people always say that, well, animation's for kids, because this movie I think is for all of us.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I liked the diversity. I didn't think it was heavy-handed. I thought it really honored. I'll use the word honored. Um, kind of the diverse backgrounds of Miles Morales.
Yeah.
I really like that, and um, I think I think we need to see more animation in
Yeah.
this style. As much as it gives me a headache and literally was my thorn for this movie, I think we need to see more of it.
Pop two
Um,
Tylenol and watch it.
yeah, pop two Tylenol. Yeah, take a CBD gummy. Yeah, yeah. Or if you're Jordan Wolf, take a gummy.
Uh,
Jordan, our friend Jordan, he lives in Illinois. I would say Rhea, because Rhea also lives in Illinois, but one, Rhea will never watch this podcast. And two, Rhea would never do that. So, and Jordan probably wouldn't do it
I just say
either.
Jordan doesn't.
Yeah.
So for the
We
record,
joke and we're like, oh man, once we get to Illinois, man, it's gonna go, up in smoke.
oh
No,
my
we are.
gosh.
I've always said that if like I literally could not physically smoke weed because I would immediately get on the phone and call the cops. Like it would be like a reflex, and I would call the cops and say I'm smoking weed. They said this is Illinois, it's legal. I'd be like, but you don't understand.
But it's me.
It's bad. I need you to put me in jail. They're like, you know what? I'm putting you in jail for 2 hours because this conversation is criminal. Um, that's what they're gonna do.
Oh, mercy.
But anyway, and with that, thanks so much for watching the Cinefile, and we've been getting more and more views, which is very, very exciting. We also want to hear from you. Did you like Spider-Verse? Did you not like Spider-Verse? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Your Rosebud and Thorn. Final thoughts. Maybe who you think we are. Do you agree, disagree that I think he's Spider-Man Noir? Also, can you count how many times Jake says Spider-Man instead of Spider-Man? He says Spider-Man like all the time. Anyway, love you, brother. But make sure to follow it. Yeah. Hey, it's anyway. Make sure to follow us. Follow us on social media. Follow Cinefile, myself, Jake. Jake's also on Twitter. We're also on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter because the things I say aren't that important. But yeah, and look forward to next week. We are doing Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yes,
that movie poster right
there. In my opinion, and get ready for next week, I think this is the greatest adventure movie ever made. But until next week, that's Jake Biller. Wherever Jake is, whatever side. I'm Ben Sparrow. Thanks so much for watching the Cinephile. We'll see you next week. And cut.